encounter is an opportunity to see the shared humanity in ourselves and others. Regardless of one's views on religion, each experience and each story weaves us together towards a common path. A path of transformation, a process of growth and understanding, a recognition that, at our core, we share a common destiny. What does the search for truth really mean in our lives? How can we find a sense of unity in a world so diverse and divided? As we reflect on these questions, we start to uncover a fundamental connection that binds us all beyond our differences. Welcome to Created in the Image of God, Building Vibrant Communities, with our host, Wade Franson. Tonight's episode is Myth or Metaphor?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Created in the Image of God. This is episode 181. Can you believe it? Doing this for at least 3 years now. And never have we had a guest quite like the one we have tonight. Dean Simone has stood on Hollywood sets with Adam McKay, Craig Gillespie, and even Jon Voight. But behind the lights and cameras, he's been chasing something else, a deeper question. That main question is, what does Christ represent? In this episode of Created in the Image of God, Dean will bring us his unique voice as an actor, musician, and something that he calls a Catholic Taoist. And the conversation on, is the Bible myth or metaphor? Combination of both. What is it exactly? And does it help us understand the meaning of the spiritual truths, or is it a hindrance to that? It's going to be a fascinating conversation. We've been having fun, in the studio before the show, and I'm going to bring him on stage now. Welcome to the studio, Dean.
Thanks for having me, Wade. Really excited about talking to you about all this cool stuff.
Yeah, I can't even count the number of emails back and forth and coordinating with your busy schedule and the time zones. And here we are going live. Right. So as we always do on this show, we like to get to know the real you, the you before you put on whatever adult pretenses that we tend to do and take conscious thought to shape who and what we are in our image of ourselves. So we want to get to know the Dean Simone that was a little boy. What were your parents like? What was the world you grew up in? And what was it like to be you?
Well, I grew up in New Jersey. I started out in New Jersey. I moved around quite a bit as a kid. In fact, I moved around 18 years in the 18 years that I lived at home. So I was definitely a corporate gypsy child, and my dad would get new jobs and get transferred. So we lived all over the country, which at the time was a little bit difficult, but it ended up being a real blessing because I really got a chance to meet a lot of different people with a lot of different customs within our own country, a lot of different accents, and a lot of different experiences. So I got a chance to do that, played a lot of sports, started getting into the arts. When I was about 7 years old, I started playing guitar, and I had a fairly interesting childhood. Definitely not your normal childhood.
Yeah. So you were always the new kid then. How did that work out? And how did you, is that part of the reason why, the music and the art, to kind of make it known that I'm here and yes, and establish presence versus hiding in the shadows?
I guess that was part of it to a degree. I also think that there was, because I'm also an only child. So I think that there was, I've always been comfortable in my own skin, so I never really felt a big push to have to make a ton of friends, but I've always been a people person in the same respect, which I guess is a little dichotomous. But I think that the art came out of it, especially the songwriting and the writing and the acting, just out of a need to really express myself. I was really the first and only person in my family that went into the arts. My dad was a businessman. My mother was a banker. My grandfather was a union guy. So it was sort of like I was the first one that jumped into that, and I definitely felt like I had a calling for it. But I will also say, I think one of the most profound experiences of my childhood was when I was in the 5th grade and somebody turned me on to Jesus Christ Superstar, the musical, and I saw it a couple of times, and it absolutely blew my mind. And I think that really took me past my Catholic school, Catholic church upbringing to, well, there's something else here. There's something going on here. And I think that was my first step into trying to get to the bottom of something that I still haven't gotten to the bottom of it yet, but I'm definitely enjoying the journey.
All right. So without spoiling anything, because we're only on episode 3, maybe 4 of season 1.
Right.
Have you watched The Chosen?
I have not watched The Chosen. And I feel like it's going to be one of those things where I sit down. I did this with Game of Thrones as well, where I feel like I have to let it all be laid out and then just sit down and go for it. So I have not watched it yet. So I can't spoil anything because I haven't seen it.
All right. Well, I'll give you a teaser then.
Okay.
I'm not a fan of, I was not then, not so much today, a fan of Jesus Christ Superstar. The reason being my own particular religious upbringing was incredibly faithful to the text. You follow me? And that was a popularized version, kind of pop culture. I loved the Beatles and I was kind of into that, but I was almost schizophrenic there. They had this part of me and then this part, and they didn't mix. You know what I mean?
Right.
But man, The Chosen, I'm like savoring every second of it. It is so good.
I am absolutely going to watch it, and I'm glad to hear your endorsement because I think you're a very bright guy, and I really enjoy your takes on things. So I am going to do it. You're not the only.
They're taking a little bit of liberty to fill in stuff we don't know, but they're 100% authentic to me. It seems about the stuff we do know. You follow me? So they're filling in the empty space with some backstories around the different disciples as they begin to be introduced in the first season, in the first few episodes. But wow, it's so authentic. And I've spent a lot of time studying, ancient Israelite history and the life and times of Jesus in his environment. And wow. So okay, then it was Jesus Christ Superstar that really ignited a passion in who Jesus was. Then what happened?
I do want to just double back a little bit to say that I don't think I ever really listened to it or looked at the lyrical content or the show in and of itself and said, that's how I feel about Jesus. That's how I feel about the Christ. It's not that it really echoed my vision or my viewpoint on it. I think the thing that it did for me that was the most helpful is that it opened my mind to the fact that what I was learning and getting from catechism and when I was going to mass on Sundays was, there's a different perspective to this. My parents went to church every week, as most Italian Catholics did in New Jersey in that world. But my parents really weren't too deep into spirituality in that respect. It was show up, get in, punch the time card, get the communion, out, done. So for me, it really opened up a passion for me that, there's really a thought process that can exist about Jesus and about Jesus's life that is not the one that I'm seeing at St. James every Sunday. So I think that was the biggest thing that it did for me. And to this day, I don't look at Jesus Christ Superstar and think, that's how I feel about it. Not in the least bit. But I do feel like it sparked ideas and it sparked a broader thought for me.
Yep. So did you then begin to dedicate yourself to a degree to following that, or was it just sort of a back burner interest for a while at that time?
It has never been a back burner interest for me. I really dove in really, really hard and strong. And then I went through all the stuff that you go through a lot of times when you're in that world, especially as a teenager. I mean, I even went through a period of about 2 years when I was, agnostic, and I thought, I don't believe in any of this stuff. And that did not last too long. I think that lasted between maybe 18 and midway through 19. And then I just jumped back in with an absolute passion for it again, even more so. And then I decided to read almost every single holy book.
Was there a trigger that helped you get back into it? Because a lot of kids go through that and they don't come back. Or they come back many decades later.
Well, the trigger was, and is strange to say. The trigger was when I was in high school, I was a complete straight arrow. I never even drank. I was an athlete. Even being a musician and playing in bands, I never did any of that stuff. And then I got out of high school and I smoked pot, and I all of a sudden started thinking about life in a different way. And soon as that happened, I never was a big drug guy and I never got that deeply into it. But I think that it kickstarted me into going, I'm interested in these things. I used to be interested in these things. And then I remember reading the Gita. I remember reading Black Elk Speaks. I remember starting to look at the Tao in those days. And of course, read the Bible voraciously, and always, even in high school, was into Joseph Campbell. So it just re-sparked all of that passion in me. And then I just have stayed with it ever since, and ridden that ride and just love it. I love having conversations with people like yourself who are so well versed and understanding and have such a great take, because I find that I always get something new out of it at the end of the day.
So when did you leave New Jersey? You said you went to all these different places growing up, but you said you're from New Jersey, but you all over. So when did you end up in LA, and what was that transition like to sort of a permanent, I'm going to be here and stay here and pursue my life here?
Well, I came here, I was 18. And I came here to be an overnight success, and it's been a super long night. So I still plugging at it.
Always darkest before the dawn,
That's what they tell me, Wade. So, but I came out here and I started to work pretty quick, and I got myself in some bands. I was with William Morris when I was 18 years old, and I really, like I said, things started moving pretty fast. I had gotten a scholarship to Cal Arts, and I had also gotten accepted to Juilliard, and I was weighing out what to do. So instead of going to Juilliard or going to Cal Arts, I wisely decided to accept a role on Facts of Life. So that was my start. I dove into sitcoms and said, who needs Juilliard? So it's been interesting, though. I can't honestly say that I would change it, because it really made
so it's been bread and butter for you, I assume, and has had ups and downs. So you wouldn't change it, but tell us a little bit about the highs and lows for those of us who want to touch greatness and think we're watching a superstar here that was in Hollywood. I mean, give us a little bit of that feel here.
Yeah, the highs and lows. Not that at all. I think I just had this conversation with my son, Jackson, who is at Bard College right now, and he's interested in acting and writing. And I think what happens is that you start out and you have a skill set at something, whether it's music or it's acting or it's writing. And, where you are, you might be the absolute best person at that at your school. It's very similar to what NFL players go through. They're the star player in the state. And then all of a sudden you find yourself in a pool with a lot of people who are the exact same way. And you really start to realize that there's luck, there's work, there's a million different reasons why it either happens or it doesn't. And then you start to see that you go through periods of time where you're booking and booking and booking and booking, and it looks great. And it seems like the doors are going to open wide. And then all of a sudden, boom, they shut. And you are really riding that roller coaster quite a bit. And what I tried to do when the door shut was try to do something in my life that I thought was still a meaningful thing, or something that meant something to me. So I actually coached high school football for a really long period of time, which I really enjoyed doing, because I really loved the sport, especially then. I loved it even more so than I do now. But I did that. I did a lot of jobs like that. Some of them.
I was going to say, that's definitely a better day job than being a waiter, while you're pursuing your real career, right?
Wait, I did that. I waited tables for 14 years. And I will tell you.
I was sure you did. I knew that was probably in there somewhere.
Oh, boy, it was in there for a big chunk. But I worked at a really great place with some really good people that I'm still friends with. And I wouldn't trade that experience.
What was that place? Because, I lived out there for a number of years off and on.
It was a place in Toluca Lake called Moe's. And it had
I've been there.
there you go. And and it had the greatest.
I was in Pasadena. I was in Irvine. I was in Long Beach.
There you go, man. Where we were, we must have crossed.
Arcadia. You know, I'm trying to think now. Were you that waiter?
I was that waiter. I was the guy who was like, "Do you want cheese? What kind of cheese would you like on that?" You know, working my stand up at the tables. Yeah. But, you know, I'll tell you something, Wade. It was a really great experience, not just because there were so many great artists that I worked with who were, waiters, but actors, musicians, literally artists and stuff. But also I got to meet some amazing people waiting tables. And I had some completely humbling experiences. You know, I'll tell you one. When I first came here, I had done Facts of Life. And I had also done a series called It Takes Two with Anthony Edwards and Helen Hunt. I played Helen Hunt's boyfriend. So it was really interesting to wait on Helen Hunt and to wait on a couple of the cast members of Facts of Life. It definitely was a humbling experience, but it taught me, okay, this is where I'm at. And this is, I need to say it may not be for a reason or the way I want it to be, but it is as it should be. And it was a good training to get to that place.
Well, I've got one more question in this segment. Then we're going to go to a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to get deep and spiritual.
Let's do it.
Dean Simone, is that a real name? Is that a stage name? And if the latter, what was the occasion to change it?
Dean Simone is my given name at birth. Dean Frederick Simone. I was, for a brief period of time, I was like, I'm going to change my name and just do something really outrageous. So I changed my name to Daddy Lane. I have no idea why I did that. I think the irony of calling myself Daddy, at that point I had one son. My other two sons weren't born yet. And I think I did that for 6 months. My friends got a kick out of it. I think that probably tanked my career for a good solid year. Casting directors generally don't like to call you Daddy. It usually doesn't work out well. But
yeah, you should have thought of that one.
I should.
All right, so we're going to go to a quick commercial break. In this case, it's an interesting author. My team put this in here, so it wasn't my choice, but we're going to run it. And then when we come back, we're gonna dive into that Catholic dualism. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back with more of Dean Simone and discovering what Jesus really is, and is the Bible myth or metaphor.
What do ancient prophecies, the collapse of empires, and the Beatles have in common? In the people of the sign, truth is revealed to be far stranger than fiction. Wade Franson weaves together a childhood torn apart, world-shifting events, and the music of a generation, on a journey that's as personal as it is historic. In the hardness of the heart, the quest deepens. Faith and doubt collide. Through shattering setbacks and unexpected miracles, Wade invites you to question, to seek, to forgive, and ultimately discover what truly matters. This is a story of reconciliation, resilience, and a universal longing to understand the mystery of God. Then, in The Rod of Iron, the relentless search for coherence comes to a breathtaking conclusion. From the Tower of Babel to science's furthest frontiers, Wade connects the mysteries of the past to the unity of a possible future and to the deepest longings of the human soul. Wade Franson's trilogy is a riveting odyssey exploring faith, science, forgiveness, and the music that ties it all together. Discover the story where every puzzle leads to a greater truth. Start your journey today.
Wow. That's pretty cool, Wade.
Yeah, the team just threw that together as a kind of a anniversary. The trilogy's been completed and out. And in fact, somebody just read the whole thing in a, I've had people tell me they stayed up all night reading it. And this person was like texting me, right? About different sections in it as it was going through, and the unveiling and the uncovering. And maybe it is fitting that video was showed tonight. We're not going to get into my views. I want to hear what because you've been on the same kind of search, the essence of Jesus. So let's start there let's take a step back and talk about the Bible itself. So myth or metaphor, that's a nice soundbite tagline for this. But But in your experience, does the Bible help or hinder our understanding of God and the divine?
Well, I can't speak in terms of I can only speak in terms of myself. And I feel like the Bible has completely helped me because I have come to this, especially at this point in my life, where I view the Bible like I view the library, which the Bible is. It is a library. It is a collection of
66 books.
Yes, exactly. And there's so many.
In the canonized version.
Yeah, right. And then there's the St. Thomas and Gospel Mary and all those. And I feel like it's been nothing but a help. I don't feel the need to look at it and to feel like I have to believe that or I have to believe this. I'm also able to look at it and not get hung up on the metaphor of it, because I do believe that so much of it is metaphorical. And I think that when we get hung up on the metaphor, we miss the transcendent of really what's at the core of it. And I think, unfortunately, that is one of the difficult things, not knocking fundamentalism, certainly not saying people shouldn't do it. I think that's one of the challenges of a fundamentalist viewpoint, is that it really does latch on to the metaphor in a certain way. And maybe that's freeing. I can't speak against it, but in the same respect, when I look at the Bible, how it affects me is I try to get what's speaking to my soul, and then I try to view it, whether it's metaphor or whether it's something that's more direct. And it's been a help for me, for sure.
And you've been reading it for decades. So what's different now than when you first, in that rush of fervor with Jesus Christ Superstar way back then? What's different now when you read the Bible?
That's a great question. I think when I first started reading the Bible, I was looking at it in terms of, I want to find secret clues in here. I want to be able to unmask things that I've missed before, that there's a wealth of information in here that I'm not being told, and I want to dive in and I want to find out what that information is. And then I think as I got into maybe my more wild years, to quote W.C. Fields, I was looking for loopholes. And then I think as I've gone further, I've sort of looked to see what the common denominator is in all these worlds and these thought processes. And I'm a firm believer now, and I have been for most of my adult life, that it is all one, and that we cannot really name it, because I think in naming it, you're doing it a disservice. Was it Meister Eckhart that said that God is not a being, God is being? And I think that truth is there in all of the holy books, certainly in the Bible. And I think I've always tried to just see what that being is that's coming through. Not necessarily the word, but the being that comes through.
Well, a good example to sort of bring this down to an anchor point is something that caught my attention recently. And I spend a lot of time in Genesis.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just love Genesis. And the story, it never gets old. And I do feel like I learn new things every time I go through it. And really knowing what it says, things come up in conversation, and then you remember what you read, and suddenly it has a new meaning. But the thing that caught my attention was this phrase, and I recently wrote about it in my Substack. Who told you you were naked? Right? It's from the Garden of Eden. And I had never really thought about that phrase, what it really meant.
Mm-hmm.
So this is now a fundamentalist approach, not that whether I believe that literally happened or not.
Mm-hmm.
Here's God asking Adam and Eve, who told you you were naked? And you sit with that for a moment and you think about what those words mean. God isn't asking, darn it, who let the cat out of the bag? Right? Who shared with you this truth that you're naked? No. It's to me, and at this stage, it just struck me this, like, who introduced shame around what I made? Because he created them naked. He created us naked.
Right.
You come out, you're naked. And when we joked about your name, father, dad, my little boy, my little girl changing their diapers, these little infants, they're naked. There's like zero shame. It's like so silly, right? And you get the baby wipe and you clean up the poop and you put the diaper on. Sorry, kids. But who
appreciate
that. who told you were naked is what got, who gave you the idea that there's something wrong with my creation, that there's something sinful, something bad, something evil, something dirty. I mean, yes, I made you from the dirt, but you follow me? Just letting that sink in. Who gave you that idea? Well, it came from the serpent. The serpent is where that idea came from. It changes everything.
Yeah, the serpent takes a beating a lot of times in many of the books. Also, too, when God was asking them, who told you that you were naked? Of course, him being God, or the being God, knew who told them they were naked, undoubtedly. So the real thing was to allow that person to answer that question for themselves, to say, it was me, which it's still going on now, isn't it, Wade? I mean, we're still basically answering to that cosmic question, because it's really us, when it's all said and done, that's doing that. If you believe, as I know you do, and I do too, and I'm sure most of your listeners do, that God is a fountain of all goodness and this incredible thing beyond our minds. It's like asking a caterpillar to do quantum physics. We really can't get it. We can just get it in our caterpillar minds. So God knew already when he asked that question. So what's really interesting is that question is still pertinent right now.
Yep.
Today.
Yep. So let's talk then a little bit about Christ, right? What does Christ really represent? And did he really have to die, or why did he have to die? Those were some of the questions that you've pondered.
Yeah, those are, it means so much to me. And I think about that all the time. And I think that there is such an interesting and beautiful study of Jesus and Jesus as the Christ and what those things are. And I think that there's a beauty in what Jesus did, in that I want to read something to you, and I cut it down a little bit, but it's a phenomenal meditation that there's a fantastic priest. His name is Richard Rohr. I'm sure a lot of people, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners know about him. He's written some fantastic books, and he's written a book that is literally my favorite book of all time, which is called The Universal Christ. So I definitely recommend it to anybody who has not read it. It's fantastic. He has a meditation that he covers in whole in The Universal Christ, but I'm going to just read a tiny bit of it. And this is really so much epitomizes a lot of my viewpoints on Jesus and the Christ. So this is what it is. He says that the crucified Jesus became what we fear: nakedness, exposure, vulnerability, and failure. He became what we do to one another in order to free us from the lie of punishing and scapegoating each other. He became the crucified so we would stop crucifying. He became our outrageously ignored and neglected soul. I think that's a very profound and beautiful viewpoint on, for me, our Lord. I view Christ as my Lord, and he is my master and my teacher. And I really believe that he became all of those things to show us this is what it's like to be a human. This is what it's like to wear this human suit. And as Jesus saying, I as the Christ, will go through this, and I will go past this, and you can do the same thing. You can go past it, and you can get to that larger self. So to me, there is Jesus the man, and there is Jesus the Christ. And call him what you want. Maybe he was a genius of consciousness. I don't know how that all came together. Maybe it was a preordained and destined thing. All I know is he is truly the way and the light. And I do believe that we come to God in here the same way that Jesus did. And so to me, he's a glorious, amazing template is how I view him.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that and unpacking that. I'm seeing already a couple of questions. I want to dive into this and peel off a couple more onion layers. So first of all, my assumption is you believe that Jesus really was a real person, that person really did die on the cross.
Yes.
As I do as well. Right. I actually confess he was also born of a virgin. Mary was a virgin. It was a miraculous birth. I believe that. Whether others do or not doesn't matter to me. I'm just saying I do believe that. So you know who I am. The question then is, do you believe that there is a literal devil?
That's a really interesting question.
And here's why. Let me tell you why. Because everything you said made me think of how the devil is defined in the New Testament. He is the accuser of the brethren, right? So when it's Jesus was crucified to teach us not to crucify others, right? Or however that was better worded than what I just said, and to stop the othering, right? So God did, says Jesus said, "Love your enemies." And even in the Old Testament, eye for an eye, all that, still the love your enemies is still there. But justice is also important, and people need to be held accountable for their evil deeds. That doesn't mean they're an evil person, but the deed can be evil, doesn't make the person evil. A good person can commit an evil act, right? So in order to not other people, there's this being called Satan, right? Is that a literal being in your opinion? Or is that just a metaphor to help us conceptualize, and this gets into dualism, which is why I'm going there. So I just want to know how you view Satan and the devil.
Well, what was the Nietzsche quote? What was it? Hell is other people. I think that and
they might have been for Nietzsche, I feel sorry for him.
I think that's quite possibly true. I think that the devil is the other. I think the devil is the understanding that we are other than God. I think your point is completely well taken, and I agree with it, that he is the accuser, in that the accusation is that you and the Father are not one. That when Jesus says that I and the Father are one, well, what did Satan do? He picked up stones in the form of you and me and said, well, we're going to stone you for saying that. And Jesus is like, for what good act are you stoning me? To your point, great point, totally agree. We are so much in this world where we judge a person by the action, and we're unable to divide the person in the action. So we get up and we poop. Does that make us a pooper? Is that who we are? Is the definition of Dean Simone is he's a pooper? Well, no. But the reality of it is that we all have done things that are unsavory. We've all done things that are.
But we all, to go with that metaphor, we all also think our own poop doesn't stink. But that's a whole other story.
Of course, yeah, no doubt about it. So I think that the understanding and the thought process that I and the Father are one. If we do not see that I and the Father are one, then that is where I think Satan is real, alive and well, and living in Argentina. I don't know whether he's there. He's amongst us and in us, as long as we see that separateness and separateness in each other as well. Because the thought process, I mean, to me, Wade, how many times could Jesus say, first of all, that really the victory has already been won. The victory has already been won with Christ when he did what he did. It wasn't, to me, and this is my opinion, it wasn't a ransom to a vindictive God who was bloodthirsty. That doesn't sound like God to me at all. That sounds like Satan to me. I think that is the misnomer, and that's the misleading aspect of the situation. So I really think it comes down to the inability to see that I and the Father are one, that you and I are one. And to me, to your point, as the accuser, he is the accuser. He is the one that's saying that's not true. Why would you think that to be true?
Well, I mean, Jesus said, greater love has no man than this, that he laid down his life for his friends. God literally said, look, I'll get somebody else to take the bullet for you. And it comes down to that, right?
Right.
And I want to go into some deep textual theology here. And I got to credit Professor Gary Rensburg, who unpacks this so beautifully. There are two Genesis stories. The first one is cosmic centric, God centric. God said, let there be light, and there was light. He creates ex nihilo, from nothing. The second creation story begins in Genesis chapter 2, verse 4. And there's this really fascinating play. At the end of the first creation story, it says that thus God created the heavens and the earth. And this is, and I'm mangling the transition of it. He said, that's what happens when God created the earth and the heavens. Mm-hmm. And it's a switch. It's like he created the heavens and the earth. Now let's look at it from an earth-centric view when he created the earth and the heavens, right? And he shares this, it's this yin yang. The first view, God says, let there be light, and there was. Everything is created very hands-off. Mm-hmm. Just he conceived and it was done. The second one, you see him kneeling in the dirt and with his own hands molding and shaping Adam. Very, very, very different. But there's even a more profound difference. In the first verse, in the beginning, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And then it says, and the earth was without form and void, and the Spirit of God hovered above the waters. What the Hebrew actually says is that was already pre-existent. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth, his Spirit hovered above the waters. The reason for this is the author is getting God off the hook for creating evil. And the waters are a metaphor for the dark evil. And then God brings order out of chaos. He begins to set a distinction between darkness and light. He begins the process of distinguishing between the sacred and the profane. Mm-hmm. So God creates order out of chaos. The chaos is pre-existing. So the author of Genesis in the first story is saying God did not create evil. In the same way that this sun and moon behind me, he created the greater and lesser lights. He didn't create the sun and the moon because the sun and the moon are pagan deities. And even in Hebrew, the words are pagan deities. So God did not create evil, and he did not create other gods. Mm-hmm. And this is inherent in the text of Genesis chapter 1. But in the second chapter, God does create evil because he introduces the serpent.
Okay.
So for theologians or philosophers, you can chew on it either way. It's presented in two different versions that solve the problem of evil differently. It's fascinating to chew on that.
It is, and also to your point, the statement that God created the rain to fall on the good and the evil says a lot more about God than the study of good and evil. Because if God is, again, not a being, but God is being, the being of all light and all goodness, what is not God, by definition, could be construed as evil because it is not of the Father. In terms of what he created, he is being itself. We, to steal the name of your show, we are created in his image. If we are created in God's image, it doesn't mean that God is a 63-year-old man with graying hair, and that looks like this. But that God is a living, breathing God. God is not a God of the dead. He is a God of the living. He is a living God. We are living beings with the freedom of choice to choose. God made us as God is, but Jesus tells us that we must be like our Father in heaven. When he talks about loving, something you brought up earlier, which was great, loving our enemy. Wow. Loving our enemy. What a concept. Do half of the people that read that every Sunday in church, do half of the people that quote that really, really take into what Jesus is talking about as loving thy enemy? And on top of it, this is a fascinating quote, and I want to get your take on it. When Jesus says, love thy neighbor as thyself. Love thy neighbor as thyself. What's he saying? Is he saying we should love ourselves? We don't love ourselves enough. Or is he saying we're all egotistical, and if we could just love our neighbors as much as we love ourselves, we would have it set? Or is Jesus saying, love your neighbor as thyself, because your neighbor is yourself? He's saying, love that which is you. God, Jesus, is saying the same thing. He is saying, we are one. We are together. And we have to unpeel that and go inside, right? The kingdom of heaven is within. It's all in here, in you, in me. We're the same. And I think that point sometimes gets missed when we get hung up on, well, did he create evil? Well, did he do that? I just think he is, I am, right? As you and I have talked about in our conversations off the air, the great I am. That's
well, amen. And I'm not, I agree with you 100%. In bringing up Genesis 1 and 2, it's just fascinating that the text of Hebrew right from the start presents it two different ways. The glass is half full and it's half empty, right?
Great.
Did God create, right? He created evil. You want to believe he created evil? If you want to look at it that way, then process this. If you want to look at it this way, then process that, right? Yeah. Is light a wave or a particle, right? Depending on the experiment you conduct, it will present itself as a wave or a particle, right?
Yes.
So depending on your hypothesis, and in the end, this is fascinating to me. The whole book of Matthew is all about judgment. It really is. And in Matthew 7, verse 1, judge not, lest ye be judged. And whatever standard of judgment you use is how you will be judged. So God's not going to judge you on whether you kept the 10 commandments or not. He's not. He literally says he will judge us based on how we judge others. So when it comes to the sheep and the goats in Matthew 25, the sheep, and I spent a lot of time on this, and I gave a sermon on this in Estonia, of all places. I really worked on this sermon, and I gave it in Estonia for this special event. And it changed my life looking at Matthew 25 and asking this question. The sheep and the goats. And by the way, it's preceded by the parable of the virgins, mm-hmm. right? And there's another one. They all slept. All 10 virgins slept. There were 5 wise and 5 foolish, but all of them fell asleep. Mm-hmm. The sheep and the goats, they have a whole lot more in common than any difference. And the main thing they had in common is when Jesus called them on the carpet, the sheep were elevated and praised. The goats were pushed away. Both of them said the same thing. When did we see you? Mm-hmm. So just like the virgins, none of the sheep, none of the goats recognized Jesus. Mm-hmm. But they behaved differently. So when it comes down to this judgment, God will judge us in a very individualized way. When we stand before God, we will all stand before Him naked,
Mhm. Well,
and He will call us into account. And so yes, we're all one, and He loves us, and He wants nothing more than for us to turn to Him, and He will embrace us while we are a long way off. But Jesus called out for us to take up our cross and follow Him. And other times He wrote in the dirt and chased people away and turned to the woman and said, "Where are your accusers?" Right?
Mhm.
Those accusers were the satanic ones judging this woman, and He chased them away. So you do have this sorting out. You have this duality that is being manifested here on earth physically and materially. And yet
we let
the
it because
spiritual is indeed non-dualistic. God is one, and He wants us to be one with Him. He said Adam and Eve, when they knew each other, they became one flesh. And in fact, they then could produce offspring that has all the qualities and characteristics of both of them in one being.
Right. And I want to go back to something that you said, because it was profound, and it's definitely thought provoking. Judge not lest ye be judged. One of my absolute favorite Bible quotes. So let's take another Bible quote and let's package those together. At that day, you will know that I am in my Father, and you in me, and I in you. That's pretty succinct. That's not mincing words. So when Jesus says that judge not lest ye be judged, when you judge what you perceive as the other, what in fact you're doing is you are judging yourself, because we are one. And so that act of recognizing other, I am different from you. I'm an Italian from New Jersey. You're a person of Nordic descent from Wisconsin. We're different. We're these different things. But the fact of the matter is, and I believe this wholeheartedly, Wayne, that you and I are one. We are one. We have these skin bags on, and we'll ride this skin bag express to the end. But when it's all said and done, what we were before is what we will be after this human experience. We are one great soul having a human experience. And when Jesus said, judge not lest ye be judged, He is saying you are literally judging yourself. Love thy neighbor as thyself, because your neighbor is you, is yourself. And once Jesus started saying that, in my opinion, if He was saying that right now, they would hang Him right up on that cross again. Let's face it. I'm gonna go to this place with it. I don't talk openly about my political leanings, because I will tell you one way or the other. And I will tell you this much about my political leanings. I do not believe in the modern political system as it stands, because I think that the viewpoint of Democrats and Republicans, this and that, me and you, this and that has nothing to do with unity. And I'll put this question to you and to your listeners. What great things have ever really, great things not in just the power of them, but great things in terms of really something that was beautiful and meaningful and made a difference in this world. What great things have ever happened that did not happen because of unity? Unity is where it's at. I am you and you are me. John Lennon says we are all together. Jesus said that. We don't want to hear that now. We want to say, I don't like that person because they're like this. I don't like that person because they're like that. This and that. Jesus said then, and His words are alive in us all, saying now, we are one. You pick up that stone and you throw that stone, you're throwing that stone at yourself. And unfortunately, we still don't get it. Hopefully we will. Right now we don't.
I could not agree more. Could not agree more. Thank you. So well said. So powerful. So emotive. So let's go back then. In light of all this, share again your perspective on Jesus, why he had to die, what he represents to you.
Jesus represents, to me, everything that I aspire to be as a human being having this experience on earth. What I aspire to be, he's my map, he's my guide, he's my light. His words are life. He is life. And Jesus of Nazareth is no different than Dean of New Jersey or Wade of Wisconsin. We are all working that. Jesus Christ, the Christ that he discovered in his human self, in his human suit, is what we aspire to do. He is saying this is what we all need to do. Here is the roadmap. Here is the way. What does he say? I am the way. I am the light. He is saying that, and if you look at the way it's translated, I am the way and I am the light means that the way and the light is the I. It is the oneness with God. And that's what Jesus was saying. To me, if I could just sit here and listen to his words and follow the things that he said and look at the things that he said and live that life that he lived, what could be better? How could I ever be a better human being and a better entity and being than to know that I and the Father are one? That to me is everything. And he said it. And the Satan that you were talking about earlier, that one that resides in all of us, is here as well in our humanness, said, well, we're going to have none of that. You just get right up on that cross and we're gonna knock that right out of you, man. And anybody else who wants to think that way, you're going to get that cross too.
Wow. Thank you so much. I'm going to go now to a quick commercial break, and I'm going to run and find a quote. I'm going to leave you in the studio here, because if I take an extra 30 seconds to find this quote, I gotta read this quote now after everything you've said. And we'll come back and wrap this up. Powerful, powerful testimony there. Thank you, Dean. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
Welcome to the Royal Falcon Foundation. Our curriculum and activities inspire and train adolescents through hands-on experiences, fostering growth and empowerment. Through immersive and challenging experiences, we shape young minds to think independently and develop their leadership skills. Our programs foster new friendships and unity, shaping young leaders to tackle real-world challenges with confidence. We believe in equipping the next generation with the skills to become leaders of tomorrow. Join us at the Royal Falcon Foundation and be part of a journey that empowers, unites, and inspires. Double your impact with our matching grant. Until the end of 2025, every tax-deductible donation to the Royal Falcon Foundation, up to $1,000, will be matched dollar for dollar. Visit our website to donate now or email info@royalfalconfoundation.org for more details. Together, we can make a greater difference.
I found the quote, made it back. A little bit winded from running up and down the stairs. We're going to just pick up this theme of unity. We're going to pick up this theme of unity. This is one of my favorite quotes. It's a Baha'i quote. It's from Abdul Baha. It's reminiscent of Psalm 33. How good and how pleasant for brethren to dwell together in unity. And in Psalm 33, it describes it in these kind of archaic terms. It's like the dew on Mount Hermon. It's like the sheep coming down, or it's like the oil that was poured on Aaron's head and ran down his beard. We know it's you have to really dig into that one to understand why anointing oil running down Aaron's face and beard is reminiscent of unity, right? But this one brings it home in a way that's perhaps a little bit more accessible than that archaic. How good it is if the friends be as close as sheaves of light. If they stand together side by side in a firm, unbroken line. For now have the rays of reality from the sun of the world of existence, united in adoration, all the worshipers of this light. And these rays have through infinite grace gathered all peoples together, within this wide-spreading shelter. Therefore must all souls become as one soul, and all hearts as one heart. Let all be set free from the multiple identities that were born of passion and desire, and in the oneness of their love for God, find a new way of life.
Wow. Wow. That's beautiful.
And you know, the sad part is so many people today are preaching unity by telling us to focus on our distinct identities, by emphasizing our distinct identities, our skin color, black and white. And, you know, I applaud the desire, the effort. But you know, it's reminiscent of that verse, the way of peace they do not know, the way to peace. They say peace, peace, but in their heart there is war. They're, you know, from whence comes wars among you? They come from your own passions and desires. You know, social justice is so much about material equality. You know, trying to enforce equality of outcomes on everybody, which doesn't work and can't work. So this unity and diversity, allowing diversity, but somehow achieving unity eludes us. But it's there. It's like we're on the cusp of getting there. Everybody, you know, almost everybody wants it today. We're just arguing about how to get there.
I so agree with you. And to the great quotes that you just said, I want to add one too. In vain do they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. We all want equality because we understand the beauty of equality, that a black woman is equal to a white man, is equal to a Hispanic child, is equal to, you know, an Asian older person. Like, we are all equal. And we all want equality, and equality is a beautiful thing, but the equality has nothing to do with these skin bags that we wear. The equality has to do with really, truly understanding that we are all one. And every time we've had a leader or an artist or a teacher that has taught that in earnest, more times than should be, those people have gotten gunned down, they've gotten killed, they've gotten eradicated by those evil forces, satanic, call it whatever you like. Even Mick Jagger said, you know, after all, who killed the Kennedys? After all, it was you and me. When we continue to see our differences, and we believe that we live in this physical realm and we identify in this physical realm, then we will perish in this physical realm. But we have to understand that the greater self, the one that is the same in you, in me, and is one in all of us, is much more important than these differences that we just insist on drawing, sadly. But I have faith, and I think we'll get there.
We're getting there. Well, we're going to go a couple minutes over time. I hope that's okay with you, Dean, because I want to look at a couple of these questions here at the end before we go to the sneak peek and wrap up. So here's one from Emily. Non-dualism says there's no us and them, but Christianity is built around the uniqueness of Christ. How do you hold those together?
Well, the uniqueness of Christ is that Christ is greater than the us and them. Christ is in you, Emily. He's in me. He is in Wade. He is in all of us. We are one with Christ, in that the second coming of Christ is that which is in you and that which is in me. And the uniqueness of Christ is the uniqueness in the common experience of oneness with Christ. That is that Christ is bigger than Jesus. Jesus Christ became the Christ, and we are one with him. So that uniqueness is a uniqueness that we all share together. That's how I feel about it.
Yep, well put. And even the name Jesus, it might be more appropriate in English to call him Jesus the Christ, right? because it's not his last name. It's a title, which means the anointed one, right? He was the anointed one, and you go back to all this religious history, right? The Day of Atonement and the Azazel. One of them was chosen to be released. One of them was chosen to be sent to the wilderness. So the lamb was chosen to be slaughtered at Passover. You had to select one of the lambs. You had to bring it into your family. The kids, it would almost like become a pet, and then you would have to slaughter it and eat it, right? So he was the anointed one. He was the chosen one. He was so he, as a person, as an individual, played that role. But the term Christ is universal. He is the anointed one for everybody. Everybody, there's no distinction. Everybody comes under that.
Oh, and may I do want to say this too. And that's a great question, Emily. And I will say also, in Galatians, it says, there is no longer Jew or Greek. There is no longer slave or free. There is no longer male and female. For all of you are one in Christ Jesus. It really can't get plainer than that. He is saying flat, it is said right there, there is no us and them. The recognition of us and them is, to Wade's point earlier, it is God saying, who told you you were naked? The thought of us and them is us realizing our nakedness. And Jesus, the Christ, came here to say, you're only seeing the surface. If you see it that way, you're only seeing the surface. There's something so much greater, and you can have it. You have it. I have it. We have it. We just have to decide. Christian non-duality is what Christ refers to as the kingdom of heaven. The Taoists refer to it as the way. It's all the same. The us and them only comes when they want division, and division is chaos, and chaos, we know, has nothing to do with God or the Christ.
Yeah, and you mentioned there's none good. You know, this fascinating little story when the man came to Jesus and said, good master, rabbi, good master, what good thing must I do to enter into life? And Jesus said, why do you call me good? There's none good but one, that is God. Let's just pause there for a moment. So Jesus was unique, but he said, I'm not good. He didn't elevate himself. He didn't hold himself to be better. The mind of Christ is to esteem others better than yourself. Jesus had that mindset. He did not elevate himself as unique or special or better. He was the one that God chose to be the sacrificial lamb. That's it. It's God's choice. God is good. He submitted to that. It's not something he wanted to do. He prayed, let this cup pass from me.
He was chosen to be that man. And again, in being one with the Father and the Father one with him, Jesus of Nazareth was a being. Jesus the Christ is being. And that is the transcendence that we're all invited to recognize. And we're all trying. Lord knows I fail more times than not, but I'm trying.
And so to unpause, then he said, but if you would enter into life, keep the commandments, right? So that's where, get in line with God, become, vibrate on the same frequency here, become one with God through submission to his will. And the way I put it is, the greater and lesser lights, I have them here on the wall always, the greater and lesser lights were put in heaven to rule the day and rule the night. When we submit to the light, we're free. We have sovereignty on earth right up to the greater and lesser light. Everything has been put under our feet. We are completely free and sovereign when we submit to the light. If we don't submit to the light, we become enslaved and we lose our sovereignty.
I fully agree, completely.
So I'm going to skip over some of these.
Are those the tough ones?
No, they're just, we don't have time. I'm going to say we don't have time. They're wonderful questions. We don't have time. This is maybe an interesting one from Leah. I hear you on unity, but without the cross and resurrection, isn't that unity just philosophical?
The cross?
Because what Jesus did, why did he have to die? Well, he had to die in order to fulfill all the prophecies that explain why there was separation. There was the veil in the temple separating the Holy of Holies, the Shekinah, and the high priest could go in once a year on the Day of Atonement at atonement, and there had to be sprinkling of blood on the veil. It's fascinating to really go into what that symbolizes. I'm not going to do it here. But when Jesus died on the cross, the veil was ripped, giving access to direct communion with God without a priesthood. Jesus became the high priest. The priesthood was abolished in the sense that he's now the high priest, and everyone has access because he died for us.
And that was opened, and
so
that portal was opened to go through.
Right. So it would. So I agree. It would be just philosophical without the cross and the resurrection, in my opinion.
I agree, and Leah, that is a really phenomenal question. All 7 billion of us, including you, Leah, and me, and Wade, and everyone else who's listening to this right now, the cross and the resurrection, every single one of us have our cross and have our resurrection. That is what's occurring right now. And the unity is that we are all partaking in that cup and drinking of that cup and participating in this grand, beautiful dance that God has given us, this blessing of life, this one opportunity to get with it.
Yep. Grace answered the same question. Christianity doesn't just flatten everything into all as one. It says God reconciles us through the cross and resurrection of Jesus. Yes, it does. And then Jesus said, take up your cross and follow me. So who have you sacrificed for lately? Who have you died for lately? Who have you poured out your life for lately? I mean, people want to talk about how much they love Jesus. Prove it. Who did you lay down your life for lately? Because if you follow Jesus, that's what he said to do the work that he did, which was reconciliation. You reconcile with your neighbors and enemies by laying down your life for them.
No greater love has a man than to lay his life down.
And I have to say this, though. Jesus said that, and Paul emphasized this, and it's throughout all the scriptures. That doesn't mean you don't have police. That doesn't mean you don't have a state. That doesn't mean you don't have judges and jails and punishments, because that's bringing order out of chaos. And if you don't stop a rapist, you are participating in making it nigh impossible for the victims of that rapist to forgive, because he's going to be back the next night and the next night and the next night. And that was never intended when Jesus told us to love our enemies and to forgive them 70 times 7. And I can prove this, right? I'm going to do this real quick. 3 parables. Turn the other cheek, go the extra mile, and if they take your coat, give them your shirt too. All 3 of those have a fulfillment in law. Turn the other cheek was because the Jesus said, masters, respect, treat your slaves nicely with dignity, and slaves don't seek to be free. Jesus did not abolish slavery. He regulated it. It was part of the human condition at that time. He regulated it. It was governed by law. It was legal. You were allowed to backhand your slave. A neighbor could backhand their slave. So when Jesus said, if they hit you, turn the other cheek, he was saying, turn the other cheek. And if they haul off and hit you now, you can take them to court. Same thing with go the extra mile. The soldier could compel you to carry his sword or to carry the mail bag for a mile. And he said, go the extra mile. But if they treated you evil, if they forced you, you could take them to court for making you do it. The same thing with the shirt off your back. If they could take your coat but they had no right to take your shirt. If you gave them your shirt, you had them by the short hairs because they broke the law, right? So without the law, none of this works. Without a civil government, without law, order, police, borders, without law, nothing works. It's chaos. That's why Jesus said, keep the commandments, and there are those whose responsibility is to enforce the law. Respect them, love them, thank them, don't defund them. They're needed. Personally, you must forgive. Personally, you must pick up your cross and sacrifice. So put your money where your mouth is. Actually, you do the sacrificing and let the policemen do their job.
Well said.
And it's kind of weird how this is common sense and we kind of don't get it, many of us. But this is education. I'm not criticizing anybody for what they think and believe in the purity of their heart.
Understood.
So, I mean, I guess we're way over time now. Anything that you want to end with, Dean? Because I've kind of held forth here the last few minutes, and I want this to be your chance to really wrap this up, put a bow on it.
Well, no, I think that you put it exactly the way you put it was beautiful. And again, I'll just reiterate this, that when Jesus says that I am the way and the truth and the life, and that no one comes to the Father except through me, he is talking about that larger self in us all, that kingdom of heaven and that place. And I would just like to read this one more time. Again, this is Father Richard Rohr, and I would like to just leave this with your audience. The crucified Christ, the crucified Jesus became what we fear: nakedness, exposure, vulnerability, and failure. He became what we do to one another in order to free us from the lie of punishing and scapegoating each other. He became the crucified so we would stop crucifying. He became our outrageously ignored and neglected soul. And I will add this: he wasn't a Democrat or a Republican. That's what Jesus was about, not the other. All together now, just like the Beatles said.
All you need is love.
Amen.
It's interesting little tidbit for the Beatles fans. I talk a lot about the Beatles in my story. That song, All You Need Is Love, the intro music for those, they weave in the national anthems of different countries. You've got the German national anthem. You've got La Marseillaise, the French national anthem. These themes are woven into that song, All You Need Is Love.
Gorgeous song. One of my all-time favorites. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Well, Dean, thank you so much. Is there any, if people want to get a hold of you, can they? Is there a place where you write or talk? Or we didn't even talk about your music. We'll have to, what was the name of that band again, that touring band that you work with?
I'm in a band called the Smokin Cobras, and we play oldies all over the world, from Japan to Dodger Stadium. We've played all over, and we'll be out there playing. And if you see our name in your town or where you are, please come out and see us. We try to spread the love everywhere we go. And I have a series right now on Netflix that I'm in. I'm not a huge part of it, but I'm recurring in it, called Gringo Hunters. So you can check me out there. And if you want to email me, I would love to hear from you. My email is deansimonblessed@gmail.com. Again, that's deansimonblessed@gmail.com. And I just want to say what an honor it's been to do this show with you, Wade. I think you're just a terrific person, and I have just learned so much hanging out with you. And this has been really one of the best hours of my last couple of years. So I appreciate you and your work.
Namaste. I'm honored. It's truly been a pleasure. Did I get that spelling right? deansimonblessed@gmail.com.
That's it. And feel free to drop me a line, anybody, and I will answer them all.
So that's out there now. Nowhere to hide, Dean.
Nowhere to hide.
The Smokin Cobras, right? Okay. We've got one more thing to do. That's the sneak peek. Dean, if you want to chill, I'll hang around after the show goes off air. If you want to catch up on anything for the audience, stay tuned. Watch this sneak peek about next week's show. There is an error in it, in which it says it's Sunday morning. We do have a Sunday morning show every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Eastern. But we have Tracy Saya coming this Sunday. This is the sneak peek for the Tuesday show, not the Sunday show. And it's a New York Times columnist. Interesting topic. Let me remind you, you're created in the image of God, and God loves his creation, even though he made you naked. We'll see you next week.
Amen.
Hi, everyone. Wade Franson here with another sneak peek for Created in the Image of God this coming Sunday, 7 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Eastern. I'm in the studio with David French, opinion columnist for the New York Times, and we're going to be talking about media literacy in a world of echo chamber clickbait. Welcome to the studio, David.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Well, and so am I. This is an important topic, right? For whether you lean towards the left or right or up or down on any given issue. Today, people claim it's hard to get to the bottom of the truth, but you have a different opinion of that. You talk about media literacy and you say, no, it's actually not that hard to find out what's really going on.
Right. It's actually not very hard to find out, certainly in the broad brushstrokes of what's going on. What is more difficult is to be constantly reaffirmed in your point of view. In other words, if you are judging media by the standard that is it telling me what I already believe, then that's one measure of media. And this is the way a lot of people approach media. They approach media and they believe it is discredited the instant that media communicates to them facts or assertions that they don't like or don't want to hear. And so what ends up happening often is that people are constantly moving towards those media outlets that are reaffirming their pre-existing beliefs. And so that is creating a generation of Americans who, depending on where they operate in the political spectrum, are just operating from a completely different set of starting presumptions and often completely different sets of presumed facts. But in many ways, yes, there's a media role in that. In other words, there are media outlets, for example, that really do cater specifically to people's preconceived notions. And they very intentionally try to tell partisans on the right and left exactly what they want to hear.
Yeah,
that's a result of market demand. People want that. That's what they want. And so it is very difficult, I think, to be truly media literate in such a partisan atmosphere. But that's often because of our own choices. Certainly media plays a role in this, but we play a role in it as well.
Well, and it's symbiotic or it's codependent rather, right? Because the media companies are actually businesses and they need to make money, and clickbait, throwing red meat or blue meat out to the audience pays off, right? So because the audience here is largely religious, I want to throw out a couple of biblical analogies here. So Jesus talked about new wine in old wineskins, right? He came and he flipped the script, right? He said it's kind of the opposite of what you've always believed. And the challenge for those who would, believe in him was to accept new ideas, different ideas from the ones they'd been familiar with. You write about religion, law, culture, and even armed conflict. Another biblical analogy is from whence come wars and fighting among you. They come from your own lusts. You're carried away by your own lusts, right? So how does this factor into your work? The idea of trying to help people look at things differently and not be caught up with the stuff that, that really appeals to them for whatever reason.
Yeah, I think one of the first challenges of media literacy actually is trying to lower the degree of animosity that people feel for their political opponents. It's humanizing people is, oddly enough, one of the first steps to media literacy. Because when I said it's difficult if your entire focus is on reaffirming your prior views, what I meant was it's difficult to know the actual truth when your focus is on reinforcing your prior views. And so what is happening is that we're living in this environment where the partisan animosity is so great, the feelings, the ill will of red towards blue and blue towards red is so great that people are absolutely totally resistant to any information that will dilute that animosity. And that's why that animosity is sort of dealing with that, humanizing opponents, is job one if you're actually wanting to create media literacy, because that animosity in many ways inoculates you against the truth. You would become unwilling to hear the truth about your political opponents if that truth contradicts your previously held ideas. And that is a tremendous problem at arriving at sort of a shared sense of facts and a shared sense of understanding.
Well, David, we'll probably have to agree that when we actually record the show, you'll have to wear a red shirt and I'll wear a blue shirt, right? So we confuse the audience here. Anyway, you're not going to want to miss this show, because we're going to mix it up a bit. We're going to get deep into this topic. We're going to use examples. We're going to explore this and make it live for you. So show up 7 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Eastern for Created in the Image of God this coming Sunday with David French, opinion columnist from the New York Times. See you there.